morning. Were we still morning or afternoon? Afternoon. I hope we are not tired getting into the afternoon mode to at least go through some legal sort of understanding of what a trust deed is. And the previous speakers have already talked about who are the key stakeholders in terms of the trust deed. So I'll just skip over. But just to answer, I think someone asked something about the trustee being a REIT manager. Just to mention that the trustee must be independent from the REIT manager and from the promoter, being that the trustee's role is an oversight role on the REIT manager's activities. So if they are the same entity or if you are affiliated in any way, then that may hamper the kind of supervision oversight they should have on the REIT manager. So that is very clear in the regulations in terms of the relatedness between the REIT manager and the trustee. And also, I think earlier someone has asked who a REIT trustee, it can be a financial institution or can be a lawyer. The regulations only allow banking institutions to register as REIT trustee. So we have to be a bank. And so far, the REIT trustees that are registered by CMA are all banking institutions. And just to go left or right? Right. Okay. Just a brief introduction of Cooperative Bank. We are registered as a REIT trustee under CMA. We have been the only active REIT trustee up till recently, and we are the REIT trustee for the existing REITs, that is the Island Fahari IREIT, and the Econ D-REIT, Econ I-REIT, and the CPF Imara I-REIT. And all IREITs, just to mention, are a going concern, then they are doing well. Then in terms of the key stakeholders in the trust deed, I think I won't go into depth with any of this because I think the previous speakers have covered. But the first one is the sponsor or the promoter. This is the person who issues the REIT, who says, I want to go into the REIT business and puts up assets to include in the REIT. They'll be the ones also who appoint all the other and assemble together all the other service providers they will need as they set up the REIT, including engaging the trustee. In this case, these can be property developers, can be companies, can be anyone, basically any of us here. If you're able to get into the REIT business, cover all the costs that had been highlighted earlier, and you have assets that you can release into the REIT, then go right ahead and be a REIT promoter. Then the next one is a trustee, and this will be the person who will hold the fiduciary responsibility over the REIT and act in the best interest of the unit holders. As according to the regulations, the unit holders are the REIT securities holders. So once the REIT is set up, it will create units, and then investors can come and acquire units. So they will be called the REIT securities holders. So as mentioned, the trustee is the one who holds the interest of all these unit holders to represent their interest in the REIT. Then, as I mentioned, they must be independent of the REIT manager and the promoter. Then the main thing is that they must maintain and hold and protect all the assets of the trust, and they are held in the name of the trustee. So as much as the trustee may not appear in the documentation as the owner, but the assets are registered in the name of the trustee. And this is to make sure that they hold the total fiduciary control over those assets. Then there are so many aspects that they cannot delegate. No matter what happens, the trustee cannot delegate due diligence and care in the operations of the REIT. So they must always, and that's why Brian was really insisting that you must engage the trustee at all times, even for those, sometimes, the operational nitty-gritties that you may think the trustee does not understand. But I can tell you is that every REIT trustee in the market also has some real estate expertise within the framework of their management structure or their normal day-to-day. If it's a bank, we do mortgages, so we probably have some expertise in terms of property management. Then they are also the ones who make some appointments in consultation with the REIT manager. This will be service providers that will come on board as you continue operating the REIT. They could be the valuer, the auditor, and so many others, depending on how the REIT is structured. Then the final stakeholder is the REIT manager. They will also be part of the trust deed. And it's because in that trust deed, we also define what their role, their duties, their obligations. And since the trust deed is an integral part of you seeking approval from CMA, so in terms of authorization, you will need to have drafted that trust deed in agreement with the trustee and the REIT manager and the promoter, so that you can actually now go seek your authorization from CMA. And thus, for some of the promoters, you may need prior consent from other regulatory bodies. For example, in the case of a pension scheme, you will need prior consent from RBA to be able to go into the business of REIT. You cannot just come and register with no authority from your regulator. Then, of course, due diligence is done. This is both on the part of the trustee and the promoter. You must make sure that whoever you're getting into contracts with, that you have done your due diligence. And also make sure that whatever is mentioned in the offering memorandum, because this is what you'll put out to the general public, is that it is true and correct. Then now, as mentioned earlier, the application is done jointly between the trustee and the promoter. Then this part, as we start now to form the contents of the trust deed, is that you must have had discussions with the promoter in terms of what would be the assets that will be held, who will contribute, all those nitty-gritties that were mentioned earlier by the speakers. So that now we go to the contents, the actual contents of the trust deed. And this is where I want us to just be very keen, because the trust deed is a key document, and it is a living document. It is what makes sure that the REIT is an ongoing concern, and it is the document that you keep referring to in terms of what the REIT is. So first of all, it establishes the REIT. It is what creates names, gives structure, basically gives birth to the REIT. So in that trust deed, it will mention. And then it also vests all the properties that will come into the REIT within that the trust deed. Then after that, it also provides for the appointment of the trustee and what their duties will be. And here they can now mention anything about the limitations of the trustee as regards to their duty to the REIT. Then it shows the requirements for segregation. So as a trustee, you have no claim over the assets of the REIT. Yes, they may be registered in your name, but you do not have claim. And so the trustee limits what claim the trustee can have on the asset. And also it provides for segregation of those assets from the REIT trustee's assets. Considering that the REIT trustee is also an entity on their own, and they probably have their own assets, then the trust deed clearly indicates that there is a clear demarcation of whose assets, and it will have listed all the assets that are coming into the REIT. Then, of course, now it lays out what is the REIT security holders as the beneficiaries. How do they acquire their units? How do they come in? Now, these are the investors. So the trust deed will generally show how will the investors be able to come and buy units, how much will be a unit, how will the unit be priced. So all this will be contained in the trust deed. And it also maps out what kind of investors are coming in. I'm sure you've heard about the professional and the non-professional investors. This is also mentioned now here in the trust deed. So, and it will indicate, is it an open-ended, is it a restricted, is it a closed-ended, is it an unrestricted? So all this will be mentioned in the trust deed. Then it will also now indicate the initial role of the promoter. Remember, the promoter is the person who literally sets up or sets forth the rate and says, I want to issue a rate into the market. So here is where it mentions, how did they come in, how did they come to provide those assets, like what David indicated, what kind of, are they coming in as shares or are they coming in as assets? So they will be indicated here under the initial role of the promoter and their obligations thereof. Then there are certain covenants that are stipulated. There are quite many within the first schedule that limits or indicates all the obligations and whatever binds the promoter. So to the extent also to which the promoter will get involved in the day-to-day running of the REIT. Remember, the promoter is the issuer, but not necessarily that they be the ones who manage the REIT. So they may appoint an independent REIT manager, like we have the case of one of the REITs, where the REIT manager is independent of the promoter, or where both functions sit within the promoter. So this clearly defines what the promoter's role will be and what the REIT manager's role will be. Again, it also now accounts for the appointment of the REIT manager and their duties. And the REIT manager has an array of duties. And basically, this is the KYM of the REIT. This is the person who does the day-to-day running of the REIT. This is the person who ensures that the properties are well managed, the REIT is making money, they have gone out, they have done research in the industry, and they have seen these assets are of value. If they are not, they have come up with a decision on whether to dispose or how to optimize those assets. And then, of course, it also accounts for appointment, retirement, removal, and replacement of the REIT manager. And then also there are certain covenants that bind the REIT manager. They will be included in the trust deed. Then as also part of, now once the appointments have been done, they have been stipulated, now it comes to the actual investments. And it now clearly indicates what will be the eligible assets coming into the REIT. Remember, as we were just told, there are different kinds of ways that assets come in. So the REIT trust deed will be the one to say the exact assets that will come into the REIT. For some REITs, you will find there are existing properties. For some, there are properties under construction, depending on how you have structured your REIT. Then it limits also the trustee powers to the extent to which the trustee is indemnified, the borrowing capacity, the ability to discharge of any property, to charge or discharge of any property within the REIT. And the trustees' covenants also come in. There are certain limitations, and these are all laid out in the first schedule. Again, number 13 is still the same as any of the other appointees, to show how we can remove, replace a trustee. Then there will be joint covenants. Now, there will be certain functions within the REIT that will be done by all three parties to the trust deed. So this will be clearly laid out. Then the REIT is supposed to be an income-generating venture. So none of their promoters go into that business without the thought that they are going to make money. So the trust deed actually lays out how income will be raised, what will, or any capital gains from maybe disposal of assets, and then how the distribution happens. How the distribution happens to the various unit holders within the REIT. Thereafter, now how the initial REIT securities will be offered, and then if there will be a redemption of units at some point, that will be also indicated. Then all the other fees to be laid out there for the trustee. What will be the fees, what will be the REIT manager's fees will be again in that document. It's quite a hefty document, but the thing to remember is that this is a living document, meaning the parties to this document can always review this document in case the rate changes in any form. Yes, thank you. I think the rest is just a run through, but majorly just wanted to talk about how the REIT trust deed will be constituted. Thank you. See, my time is run out.
Yes, it has run out, but you're just in good time. Let's appreciate it with a clap, please. I think there's a question or two that I have seen as well, so you could tackle that in our usual quite fast way. One of it was about trust deed being a living document, and I'm just joking, that wasn't the question. So what's the process of changing a trustee?
We've not had an instance. We've not had an instance of changing a trustee, but the trust deed will lay out what exactly would be the process of changing a trustee.
Excellent.
Yes, so that will be left to the discretion of the parties to the trust deed. So we'll have generally laid out. And also the regulations are clear on how you can change a trustee.
I mean, yeah, it's a living document, so someone can die, another one can come in. Hi, Vanessa, can you give a live or real example from among the REITs under you where the promoter is the manager at the same time?
Okay.
Just an example, that's all they are.
Yeah, just an example is the ILAM Fahari REIT. ILAM, ICA Lion Asset Management, is the promoter, and also ILAM Asset Management is the REIT manager.
Excellent.
Yes.
Let's appreciate it with a better clap now. Thank you so much.